Hello, hello. Welcome back to Stumptown Radio, Portland Thorns edition. On this very episode, we're going to provide you all the major club updates, including head coaching search, new director of scouting and recruitment, training facility updates, and as well as more potential moves. To join me on this particular episode, in this special episode, I have Melina Gaspar. Melina, how are you doing?
Hey, Phuoc. Hey, everybody. Doing better now that December is over, and I'm going on a little trip in the next few days. Lots of, well, I don't know if lots, but at least we have some things to discuss regarding Thorns.
Melina, it's good that you're going on vacation, especially, just to decompress and recharge, things like that. Where are you going though?
I'm going to Patagonia. It's very beautiful over there. Lots of green stuff, lakes and woods, and I don't think it looks like Portland, but it's the closest I can have, with the woods and all that thing. And I'm gonna hike. So I'm gonna lose myself in the middle of the mountains for a while. But I'm gonna be over here from time to time.
Yeah, I love that for you, by the way. I was looking at photos. I think before we got on, for this podcast, I was looking up photos of Patagonia and it's just beautiful. So beautiful, right? And I'm jealous because I know over there you're in summertime right now, so you're gonna have great weather. Obviously it's gonna be a little, sweatier just to hike and everything, but that's okay. That's the scenery's gonna make up for it, right? But Melina, so let's talk through some updates with Portland Thorns. I know folks are, been waiting for a lot of updates, especially in regards to the head coaching search, right? So, according to a team source, we've been told that the head coaching search is down to a final shortlist, with only a few candidates left, right? Melina, obviously this search it seems, and then looking at the timeline, right? This head coach is going to bring in their own assistant coaches as well, because Sarah Loudon, interim coach Sarah Loudon, is still on staff. Vitas is still on staff as well, so those will be two key assistants to help kind of the momentum moving forward with the club. But also, those two assistant coaches are really respected by the players as well, right? And then also the timeline is, we've been told that it's going to be during the preseason window as well. So, Melina, just looking at the head coaching search, obviously down to their final shortlist at this point, right? You know, Obviously, I think a lot of folks wanted a coach to be hired around now. But for me, I'll share my opinion in a second. But what's your opinion on them just kind of taking a little longer, like pretty much leaving every stone left unturned at this point, right? Like just making sure they're doing the due diligence, especially, we have to remember too, Jeff Agus in his front office, right? We're talking about Lucy Rushton, we're talking about Angus McNabb. This is their hire, right? This is their one of probably their biggest hire they'll ever have to make in their tenure, right? So thinking about that and then just looking at the timeline, right? They're going to be heading to preseason in what is it, late January, right, in California. But yeah, they expect the head coach to be hired during the preseason window. Like I said, Melina, talk to us about them taking a little bit longer to do this. I don't know if we have to say a little bit longer, but just taking the proper amount of time it seems like to make this call, especially one that will determine the club's kind of destiny in the next few years.
Well, I think the decision is very important. So it is for me kind of normal that, that they are taking this time. I don't think they are taking too much time, to be honest.
Yeah.
But of course, if you ask fans, of course they wanted to start 2026 knowing who is going to lead this team this season and the upcoming seasons. To be honest, I really don't mind they taking their time as long as it is a good hire, because we know that with the previous coach, with Rob Gale, they also took their sweet time, but we ended up having the guy around the corner. So as I don't think they're gonna do that again. I think the lessons have been learned, and I believe it's gonna be a good one. Yeah, and yeah, I don't think, of course, if January ends and we still don't have a head coach, that's gonna be worrisome. But so far, I think it's everything. It's okay. I mean, we just started this year. It's been a week into January, so yeah. Hopefully, they're gonna announce it within the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not too concerned with the timeline, Melina. I understand, you would love to get the head coach in sooner to work with the players, get to know the players, build some camaraderie, build, some rapport. But for me, it's about getting it right, right? That as simple as that. right? Because if you get this hire right, you have a chance to turn the Portland Thorns into an NWSL dynasty the way they were, for large stretches, right? It was them and what North Carolina Courage for the all throughout the 2010s, right? Since the start of the NWSL. So my whole thing is you got to get it right, right? And here's the thing: when you are making this hire, especially when it's probably going to determine your tenure as, president and GM of the team, you need to get this right, right? So my whole thing is the fact that they're taking a little longer, and from all indications, it's they're like I said before, no stone it's going to be left unturned, right? That is great news because I feel like Melina, this is not. I'm not trying to slight at the previous processes, but I am at the same time. Is the last two resulted in internal hires, right? Since 2021, Mark Parsons, Ryan Wilkinson, Mike Norris, and Rob Gale. None of these coaches, right? Mark Parsons obviously leaving for national team job, and then also back to Washington Spirit. But our point is, none of in the past 5 seasons, Portland Thorns have had four different coaches. Melina, four, right? None of those coaches have lasted 2 full seasons. That is why this hire needs to be done properly. And it's like I said, from all indications, from everything I've heard, that's being done properly. It's going to be interesting to see who they come out with during the search and who they end up hiring. But for me, I put it in, just the updates piece I put on, but my thoughts are all in there. So if you're curious about how I see it, my thinking is at the end of the day, it's more important to get it right than rush into a decision that you're not fully sold on, right? So I think that was really key, but it's good. Another shout out I want to give is like the team providing more updates, like these key decisions is really important. This is something I feel like for the past few years, Melina, we didn't get as many, but the fact that we're getting more updates now, I think the transparency's gotten so much better and it will continue to get better as well. So I'll keep everyone in the loop on that as much as I can, right? But yeah, it's good. Preseason's coming up. I can't believe preseason's coming up in the next few weeks. Feels like we just got the off season. We got our own off season, but we've been doing every team seems like they're making a bunch of moves right now. And we'll see what moves moving forward. But Melina, so Mike Smith was the longtime director of scouting and recruitment for Portland Thorns, right? And he took the same job to head over to Denver Summit FC, the expansion side. And then now Portland Thorns have hired Mark Carr as their new director of scouting and recruitment. For those who don't know, Mark Carr originally comes from San Diego Wave, okay? And here I'll give you all a rundown of what he's done. So in May of 2023, he was hired as head of global scouting for San Diego Wave, okay? After leading global scouting efforts for 2 seasons, he was promoted to director of player recruitment in August of 2025, right? And this move was confirmed to me um, just recently, but also, he was hired in December of 2025 as well. I think I tracked it back to like late December. So Portland Thorns have found, their new director there. But Carr has also spent time with the U.S. national teams at the U15, U17, U20 levels. He also worked with the U.S. women's national team as an opposition team scout. And then he also worked alongside the senior team to bring in the best young talent. He was also the head coach at University of Oklahoma and San Francisco, and he was also an assistant at UCLA. And here, Melina, I'm going to share with you some names that he helped bring in at San Diego Wave in the past two off seasons. Okay, and during the 2 seasons, right? We're talking about Cascarino, we're talking about Maroney, we're talking about Sanchez, we're talking about Lundqvist, we're talking about Wesley, we're talking about Escanio, we're talking about Trinity Armstrong, Byers, Dali, Corley, Arias, Dudinha, and Fazer, right? Like, Melina, just I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Mark Carr as the new director of recruiting and scouting because it seems like, during his time with San Diego Wave, he was not scared to bring in major names. Obviously, everyone's going to know Cascarino's name by now, MVP candidate, but also one of the best footballers in the world. Melina, what are your thoughts on just seeing this hire? Looking at his resume, what are your thoughts on this hire moving forward?
I really love it because since he worked with the U17, U15, like you mentioned, with the U.S. women's national team. He is very well aware of young talent, which it's very important. We know that since the draft doesn't exist anymore, having knowledge of that part is way important. And he also worked as a head coach, so he can not only like point out to the talent, but also has that extra that I think being a head coach gives you to know. I don't know, different positions where the players can play or where they have some potential to exploit. The fact that Portland doesn't have a head coach yet, I think it's kind of good because they can team up, and yeah, they can work as a unit regarding young talent and where they can find those young talent to exploit and maybe other teams have missed. And also, I really like the names you mentioned that he brought to San Diego because we know that Portland has been lacking that in the last couple of years, international talent, and the fact that he was responsible for bringing those players. I mean, that's important. Knowing that also PSG is not having the best of its times, and many players are leaving the club. I mean, maybe Portland can seize the opportunity. Yeah, I think it's great whatever you see it, and also the fact that he also has the experience with an WSL club also adds to this because he knows how the league moves and all the rules and all that. You know that sometimes it can be tricky. So yeah, I think it's a great hire, um, and hopefully we're gonna have some great signings before the window closes.
Melina, just to kind of follow up on that, do you, just looking at his resume alone, right? You pretty much see this as an upgrade from Mike Smith, correct?
Yes, I haven't checked Mike Smith's resume, but this Mark Carr has an extensive resume. I mean, he has worked everywhere: college, U.S. Women's National Team, NWSL. So he has it all. I mean, head coach, recruitment. He has occupied many different positions, and that gives him he makes a very well-rounded professional.
Yeah, no, I think that's how I see it, right? So I'm looking at this hire, and one of the big things I've noticed is, right, you mentioned this multiple times during your response, Melina, is the fact that he has extensive experience doing everything in football, right? We're talking about coaching, we're talking about being, a scout, we're talking about recruiting, we're talking about assistant coach, head coach, it doesn't matter, right? We're talking about just the fact that he's done everything in this sport and now he continues to kind of evolve. And the director of recruiting scouting, especially for a club like Portland Thorns, is massive, right? Because back then, Portland Thorns were not in competition to bring any of the top players. If they wanted a top player, Melina, back then, they could bring him in, but that has not been the case anymore, right? It's been way more of an even level playing field, and Portland has kind of had to go for hidden gems. We're talking about like Marie Mueller, right? Those type of players who aren't well known enough until they get into the league, right? So those type of moves Portland has had to make in the previous seasons. And now, but looking at Carr's resume, you just kind of the first name we listed off was Cascarino, right? We're talking about Dolly, we're talking about Sanchez, and we're talking about Dudinha. That team was not scared to make big moves, Melina. Portland cannot be scared to make big moves, right? They're at the point where they have enough young talent to build on and to grow and to have ready in the next three, to next 2 to 4 or 5 years, whatever it is, right? But they want to win this season, right, Melina? And there's still a few uh issues with the team. We're talking about center back, which we'll get back to in a second, but for Portland to be the club that they want to be, they need to upgrade at director of recruiting and scouting. I think this is a really good hire from everything you've seen on the resume. It just makes so much sense for Portland to kind of get, somebody who's done it all, especially in women's football, right, Melina, who has gotten to see, youth level, college level, and then pro level, right? That is really, really well, really good. And then I don't know they could have done much better at this position, right? But now my question is, Portland in recent years, Melina, have gone for the high upside and young talented players to the roster, whether that's through transfers, through signings, draft, right? when we talk about draft, I mean, college players now signing, right? So they've gone for that route, right? You know, does that change Carr's mission with the team or his ability to bring in the best players from around the globe? And I think for us, we can't answer that question right now. It's only time will tell, right? So will Lisa Bethal Mirage and Alex Bethal give him the resources to continue to help elevate Jeff Agus in the front office? Or will they continue to try to hit those gems, right? Those young gems? Because Mark Hart, he's been able to locate the young talent as well. So it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of path Portland Thorns move forward because, I realistically think they need a couple big pieces, not young and developing pieces, right? So it's gonna be interesting to see how that moves forward. And then in regards to training facility, I know I've gotten a couple questions from the mailbag about where they are with that. From everything I've been told, I just got a recent update as well. All is going to plan for the new state-of-the-art training facility, and it's still expected to be ready for the start of the 2026 season. Obviously, things change quite often, so I will keep you up to date as much as I can on there. But the one thing I do want to talk about is Melina. Obviously, we talk about this all the time, but the importance to have a grass pitch. And obviously, the Portland Thorns have shared their updates with that, like a really unique system, obviously, to make sure the drainage is proper for their grass pitch. But they'll have a turf pitch as well, since they still play a few turf matches at home, obviously, but also turf matches on the road. So the fact that the players, won't have to kind of grind day in and day out on turf is massive, Melina. Just I've talked to so many players and they've all said the same thing, how it's grueling and it takes a lot out of their bodies. So that's really good. But with the NWSL season starting before the WNBA season, obviously the Thorns, in regards to the phases, will be completed first for the most part. So looking forward to that. And then, like I mentioned before, the team's going to report later this month and head to California for the start of preseason training camp. They'll also train at Providence Park until their new training center is available. And then obviously once it's available, I will be up there getting reports and just an inside look as well. So we'll have all that. But Melina, you and I were speaking before this, right? We're talking about upcoming moves, things like that. Diane is headed to Rayadas, Monterrey of Liga MX Femenil. Portland's already thin at center back. Can you just give us your thoughts on Diane moving, Portland being thin at center back, but also you're a Liga MX, you cover Liga MX Femenil for All for 11. Can you talk to us about how this helps Rayadas as well?
What on the Portland side, I think she didn't play much, of course, and she never got the opportunity. We don't know what happened at training service. I don't know, but yeah, like she didn't have many minutes to prove maybe if she could earn her place on the team or a starting position. So I think it was a logical thing to happen. Yeah, I think she's gonna be used very well in Rayadas because last season, I mean, Rayadas has been like not doing great in the last few seasons they have played, and it has getting worse and worse with the passing seasons, passing tournaments, and they kind of like let go many players at the end of Apertura last tournament, and so they needed this top player that has played in WSL, knows she's very competitive, of course, and she has like different qualities that the other Rayadas players don't have. And also, what happened to Rayadas is also that the roster started to become kind of stagnant. Like they didn't renovate much, and they were relying on on the players that did great at some point in the past, but they are not peaking anymore. So they needed a player like her.
That's going to be one of those tricky situations, Melina, because if that's the case, Portland Thorns will be down to Jaden JP Perry, Sam Hyatt, and Issa Obeys as the three center backs. It depends on where you see Mally McKenzie, but she's been playing more as a fullback, but more as out of necessity. She's played a little center back too. I know that was Mike Norris's decision a while back to move her to center back after she was more of an attacker in college. But Melina, they're down to really three full-time center backs. They don't add her center back in this window. Is the offseason incomplete in your mind?
Yeah, for sure. We have spoken about this many times. How that's the more tired position they need to reinforce. So yeah, I think if Mark Carr is as great as we think he is, I mean that's the first position he is looking at to bring somebody.
Yeah, for me, it's very clear, right? If they are, we've talked about this all offseason. Melina, you and I have mentioned this all offseason, the need for a center back, right? And here's the thing, could you roll out those three players and just kind of rotate them? Yes, but eventually they're going to be ran into the ground, right? Like they're going to be dead tired. You're not going to have much left for the end of the season push, right? That's an issue, right? And here's the thing, even if you wait until the summer window, that's waiting too long because you're asking your players to play, what is it, half the season, with limited rest, things like that. And we don't even know what competitions they're going to be participating in, right? So that's a lot. I have a lot of concern if they go in, and then even if you have Malik McKenzie as your fourth center back, what happens when if Obeys gets hurt or Hyatt gets hurt? You are you are down to two center backs essentially, right? So that just can't happen. So I'm curious how they kind of address this situation. Yeah, and here's the thing: they could have all the confidence in the world in the three center backs, but all it takes is, unfortunately, all it takes is, one bad step or things like that. You don't want to see that, right? So they need to be prepared for any contingency, and and obviously you want clubs to be prepared even before anything, hopefully nothing happens, but before anything happens, right? With the Portland Thorns' luck recently, they should be over prepared, right? So it's gonna be interesting to see how that all plays out as well. So we'll look into that. But Melina, let's go back to the head coaching search real quick. To end it, obviously the biggest thing is the timeline, right? The timeline will it's gonna be during, like we said, during the preseason window. But just kind of going back to it, just looking at Jeff Agus, this is his big test, right? We're talking about a decision that will determine very likelihood how the Portland Thorns perform, obviously this year, but the next few years too, right? This is probably a coach that they're going to be committed to for multiple seasons, right? What does this coach need to bring in immediately? Because obviously it looks like they'll have a little less time to work with the team before the home opener in March. Oh, sorry, the season opener in March. But what does this coach need to do immediately to hit the ground running?
I think it's important that in the press conference when he presented, he can line up with the club's mentality. And because you can notice that, when they talk, how they talk, how they address the media. And one of the complaints I have about Rob Gale is that I really didn't like how he addressed the media. I mean, I know I haven't been to many press conferences, but the times I did, it was like the guy was pissed when you would ask something after a bad result, And for me, I mean, we are doing this because we want to help grow the team, not because we are being paid by the club or anything. So I think that's important, not just how he or she addresses the players, but also everybody that is related to the club. And of course, we expect some signings. Yeah, like it would be great to see how he impacts the roster and the signings that the club makes. We already have said it: center back, midfielder. The club needs another midfielder, and yeah, how comfortable the players that have been out for a year or so feel around him or her. Because we know that ACLs or other kinds of gruesome injuries can really take a toll on a player's mind. So give them that confidence back. Is going to be crucial for them or for this head coach, as well as the new signings. So I think all that, and give the team its identity back. Because we have talked about that like 2 years ago. I remember, like we talked about identity a lot, but we haven't touched that in the last year because there was another more dire matters. But yeah, now it's about that, return to glory and all that. And I think, well, it doesn't have to be like a big name as a head coach. but it has to be somebody that understands that and can have that as one of his or her main goals.
Yeah, for me, it's very clear, right? Like during this process, they're already going to talk about tactics and, philosophies, things like that. And it needs to be clear, right? The players need to understand, their roles at early on, but they also need to understand that the coach has the best interests at heart, right? And it's important for the players to be in places to succeed. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but this team is ready to win, big titles, especially with Sophia Wilson leading the helm, right? But you also have a bunch of rising stars. You have the heartbeat of Portland Thorns, which is, Morgan Weaver coming back as well. And then you're looking at, the fullback room, right? M.A. Vignola, who missed, the playoffs down the stretch, is going to be back. You have Marie Mueller coming back as well. There's so much. This team is very talented, Melina, to the point where the expectations, if they made they got third and a semifinal appearance last year, they're expected to get first or second, win a shield or a championship this season. There's no doubt about it, right? There's no excuses. Even for a first year head coach, right? I don't think they're going to have that grace period, unfortunately. That's just how it is, right? So they're going to have their, mentality pretty much implemented on the team immediately, right? And they're going to have to earn the players' respect, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think just looking at like we said before, looking at the timeline, looking at just the due diligence being done, seems like this is whatever hire they make is one that they fully believe in, and it's one that feels like this is, in first time in like three searches, I feel like this is done properly. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really good sign as well. But Melina, that will be all from us at Stumptown Footy for Stumptown Radio this week. We'll have more episodes coming up, obviously. But Melina, any final thoughts from you?
No, just hoping that the Portland, that the club can make official the head coach soon. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your support. Obviously, as we get updates from the club, we'll continue to provide them as much as we can. Just obviously looking forward to have a bunch of stuff coming, in the works as well. You and I got a big project coming up too. So we're looking forward to making that announcement as well. But looking forward to, continue to put out all the coverage that you all deserve. And thank you all for supporting us always. Thank you.